Namaha. Hari Om. Let's take a sankalp. Okay, so we are looking at the section of Jeeva Vichaara. So we have already analyzed the Jeeva, means the individual, based on the raw material that the individual is made of. So based on the raw material, we have divided the individual into 3 Sharirams. The Sthula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram and Karana Shariram. After that, we analyze the Jiva based on the state of experience, the conditions that the Jiva undergoes. So avasthatrayam, that was Jagrat Avastha, Swapna Avastha and Sushupti Avastha. And finally, now we are going to analyze the Jiva based on the functions that, so we are going to divide the personality based on the functions. So it's a functional division of the personality. So like I said, that it is same as the Shariratrayam only. Yeah, can you see the slide? So it is same as the Shariratrayam only. The Shariratrayam was division based on raw material, and the Pancha Koshas, that is the division based on the functions. Okay, the functional division of the personality. So in that we saw that Annamaya Kosha, we saw the 5 koshas. The Annamaya Kosha is same as the Sthula Shariram. Then the Anandamaya Kosha, the subtlemost, that is the same as the Karana Shariram. And we saw that the Sukshma Shariram, when it comes to this function-based personality division, the Sukshma Shariram gets divided into Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha. So up till this, we've already seen. So now let us go in the details of the Panchakoshas. Okay. So sabse pehle Annamaya Kosha. That is the grossest of the koshas, the sthulamost. So Annamaya Kosha or the Sthula Shariram, that can be termed as our anatomical system, the anatomy of the body. That is called Annamaya Kosha. Means the structure of the body, the organs, the physical part, the limbs, all that belongs to the Annamaya Kosha. And this is called Annamaya because it is born out of the essence of Annam or food, right? It is born, it is nourished out of Annam, out of the food that we eat, right? Therefore, it is called Annamaya Kosha. The food that we eat, what happens to that? It becomes a part of our body only the moment it enters us. Correct? The moment we eat the food, then there is no separate food and separate body. Jab khana table pe pada hai, tab I can say that, okay, this is food and this is me, my body. But the moment it enters us, there is no separate division between the food and my body. Both become one. So what happens? The food itself gets modified into Annamaya Kosha. That is why it is called Annamaya Kosha. It is the modification of the Annam into the body. So let us see how Tattva Bodha defines this kosha. Here, So this is the definition given by Tattvabodha. As usual, first they ask the question, Annamaya kaha? So the answer is Anna rasa, Anna rasenaiva. Anna rasenaiva bhutva. Means it is born out of food. Anna rasenaiva bhutva means born out of the essence of food. Anna rasa. Then Anna rasenaiva vruddhim prapya means it grows by the food, grows by the essence of the food. And Anna rupa prithvivyam yad viliyate tad Annamaya Kosha or sthula Shariram. So Anna rupa prithvivyam yad viliyate means it goes back to the earth in the nature of food only. It is of the nature of food. So that is called the Annamaya Kosha or the Sthula Shariram, the gross body. Right? So this is the definition of the Annamaya Kosha. It is the simplest. There is no big deal in this. So then after the Annamaya Kosha, then comes the group of three, the Pranamaya, Manomaya and Vijnanamaya Koshas. That is the Sukshma Shariram. But before we go to the Pranamaya Kosha, we'll revise first the 19 parts of the Sukshma Shariram. Since these three koshas together, they form the Sukshma Shariram, no? So first, let us look at the 19 parts, which we had seen here. So do you remember these 19 components of the Sukshma Shariram? Why we are revising it? So that we know that which of these components fall under which kosha. Okay, that is why we are revising it. So sabse pehle, we had seen the Pancha Jnanendriyas, means the 5 sense organs of knowledge. So they are the sense organs corresponding to Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa and Gandha. So these are the 5 Jnanendriyas. Then the 5 Karmendriyas, Vak, Pani, Padav, Upastha and Payu. Means the talking tongue, hands, legs, organ of procreation and organ of evacuation. These are the Panch Karmendriyas. Then the Panch Pranas, the 5 physiological systems. You remember the Panch Pranas? So Pran, Apan, Udan, Vyan and Saman. These are the 5 pranas, the 5 physiological systems. And the 4 Antakaranani. This I'm sure all of us remember. The 4 Antakaranani are Mana, Buddhi, Chittam and Ahankara. Okay. So a revision of these components of the Sukshma Shariram. Okay. So then with this, we'll go to the Pranamaya Kosha. So this Pranamaya Kosha, that corresponds to the physiological system. So physiology means the functions of the anatomy. The Pranamaya Kosha, it takes care of the functions of the anatomy. So what is the difference between anatomy and physiology? So anatomy refers to the various parts of the body. And physiology refers to the functions of these various parts of the body. The energy behind their functioning. Okay. So Pranamaya refers to the functions of the different part of the body. Annamaya kya tha? The different parts of the body. And Pranamaya kya hai? The functions of the different part of the body. And once again, we'll see that it is because of, that is why at the time of death, what happens? The Sukshma Shariram leaves the body. And the Sukshma Shariram leaves the body means these three koshas, the Pranamaya, the Manomaya and Vijnanamaya koshas, they leave the body. And that is why what happens? That means when the person dies, the physiological systems are not there because the Pranamaya has left. So no physiological systems. So even if the anatomy is still there, no, the body is still there, the heart is still there, but it is not pumping. The physiology is not working. The physiological systems are not there because the Pranamaya is no more there. And that is why we've seen before also that organ transplantation and all that, it is possible. So the dead person, okay, who is the organ donor? We do netradan and all those things. No? So many organs are donated. So the dead person who is the organ donor, that dead person has the anatomy. The anatomical system is intact. But that person, because the person is dead, the physiological functions are not operating. Whereas the organ recipient, that person has the physiological function intact. He is missing the anatomy, the physical organ. And when he receives that physical organ from the donor, then the recipient has both. The recipient has anatomy as well as physiology. And so the organ can function in the recipient. Understood? Therefore, anatomy belongs to the Sthula Shariram and therefore it remains even after death. And physiology, it belongs to the Sukshma Shariram, the Pranamaya. And therefore, it disappears after death. Disappears as in, we've seen it doesn't disappear, but the connection with the Sthula Shariram is no more there. So the heart is there, but it is not pumping because the physiology is not there. The Sukshma Shariram is no more connected with this Sthula Shariram. Now this is Pranamaya Kosha. It is otherwise called Kriya Shakti also. Okay, important to remember. The Pranamaya Kosha is called Kriya Shakti. And this Pranamaya Kosha or Kriya Shakti, it consists of 10 organs from the Sukshma Shariram. Out of 19, the Sukshma Shariram has 19 components. Out of those 19, 10 organs belong to the Pranamaya Kosha. And those 10 organs are the Pancha Prana. The name itself suggests, right? The Pranamaya Kosha. So the Pancha Prana, why? Because the Pancha Pranas are the physiological systems. And the Pranamaya Kosha is also taking care of the physiological functions of the body. So these Pancha Pranas, Prana, Apan, Vyan, Udan and Saman. Do you remember the Pancha Pranas? What were their functions? Like just quickly, I will tell you. So Pran means it takes care of the respiratory systems. Apan takes care of evacuation. The release of waste, it goes downwards. And Vyan takes care of the circulatory system. Udan is the reversal system. Remember the ejection of the Sukshma Shariram from the Sthula Shariram, and also other reflex actions like vomiting and all that. So the reversal system. And Saman, it takes care of the digestive system. So all these physiological systems make the Pancha Pranas. So these 5 organs, the Pancha Pranas, they belong to the Pranamaya Kosha. And along with that, the Pancha Karmendriyas, the 5 organs of action, means the speech, The hands, legs, organ of procreation and organ of evacuation. Vak, Pani, Padav, Upastha and Payu. So these 10 together, they form the Pranamaya Kosha. So Prana, which gives energy to the Karmendriyas, it is the Prana, right? The physiological systems. When these Pancha Pranas, when these physiological systems, the respiration, circulation, digestion, when all these physiological functions, they operate in the body, they give energy to the Karmendriyas. Karmendriyas are the tools. So energy plus tools. Energy coming from the Pancha Pranas and the tools. Tools are the Karmendriyas. So energy plus these tools, they together give us the Kriya Shakti. Hence it is called the Kriya Shakti. So Pranamaya Kosha is also called the Kriya Shakti. Energy plus tools. The Pancha Pranas plus the Pancha Karmendriyas. That is equal to the Kriya Shakti. Now let us see the definition given by Tattva Bodha for Pranamaya Kosha. Here. So, Pranamaya Kaha Pranadyaha Panchavayavaha. So, Pran Adi, Pranadyaha, Pran Adi means in Shastra they talk like this only. Pran Adi means the starting from Pran, the five, the Pancha Pranas. So, Prana, etc. means Pran, Apan, Vyan, Udan. So, Pranadyaha Panchavayavaha. So, these five vital air sheath. Okay, these five physiological systems, the Pancha Pranas. Then, Vag Adi, Indriya Panchakam. Vag Adi, again the same thing. Vag, Pani, Pada, Upastha, Payu. So, Vag Adi, Vag, etc. Indriya Panchakam. So, Karmendriya Panchakam. So, that is the Pranamaya Kosha. Okay. Again, this is simple. No complications, nothing difficult to understand. So, Annamaya was the anatomical sheath. Pranamaya is the physiological sheath. Then comes Manomaya Kosha. Now, Manomaya Kosha, that can be termed as the psychological function. So, anatomical function, physiological function, and Manomaya is the psychological function. So, all the emotions, all the doubts, all the desires, they belong to the Manomaya Kosha. It is our psychological personality. And we also call it the Ichha Shakti. Pranamaya Kosha was the Kriya Shakti. We said Prana plus the instruments, the Karmendriya. Kriya Shakti, that makes us act. Whereas this Kosha, we call it the Ichha Shakti. And Kriya Shakti is always preceded by Ichha Shakti. Matlab, desire alone, Ichha alone, it promotes a person to do action, no? Without the desire to do action, we would not do any action, right? So, the Ichha Shakti or the Manomaya Kosha that operates, and that in turn makes the Kriya Shakti or the Pranamaya Kosha operate. So, Manomaya Kosha, it pushes the Pranamaya Kosha into action. Manomaya Kosha pushes us to do action. Okay, this psychological function, the psychological personality of ours, it is that which pushes the physiological functions to happen. Okay. So this psychological personality is called Manomaya Kosha, and it consists of 8 organs out of the 8. Okay. So the Pancha Jnanendriyas, the 5 organs of knowledge, means the ears, the skin, the eyes, the tongue means tasting tongue, and the nose. These 5 sense organs, they belong to the Manomaya Kosha. And along with these 5 Jnanendriyas, the Manaha, the Chittam, and Ahankara. Manaha, obviously, Manomaya Kosha, to Mana to hoga hi. So Mana and Chittam and Ahankara of the Antakaranam, they also belong to the Manomaya Kosha. Is this confusing or it's clear? बहुत सारे terms use हो रहे हैं, but since we have seen these terms also many times, I hope it is not confusing. Okay. Lalita ji, you were saying something?
It's okay, madam, not confusing.
Okay. So the Manomaya Kosha has these 5 organs, the Pancha Jnanendriyas, and these 3 organs of the Antakaranam, the Mana, Chittam, and Ahankara. Now the definition given by Tattva Bodha. So Manomaya Kosha kaha manascha Jnanendriya Panchakam militva yah bhavati saha Manomaya Kosha. Simple. What is the mental sheath? What is the Manomaya Kosha? Manaha cha Jnanendriya Panchakam means the mind and the 5 organs of perception. They together form the mental sheath. So just an aside note, we had studied that Sukshma Shariram has 19 parts for our understanding, right? We had studied Pancha Jnanendriyas, Pancha Karmendriyas, Pancha Pranas, and 4 Antakaranani. But Tattva Bodha just considers 2 components of the Antakaranam, Manaha and Buddhi. So Tattva Bodha, it includes Chittam and Ahankara also in Mana Buddhi only. Okay, so according to Tattva Bodha, Sukshma Shariram has only 17 parts. Okay, that is why it gives this above definition. So it just says Manaha and these Pancha Jnanendriyas, Jnanendriya Panchakam, it says. So it doesn't mention Chittam and Ahankara separately because it includes that in Manaha only. Okay, this is just an aside note. So this is the Manomaya Kosha. Okay, so Manomaya Kosha includes the 5 Jnanendriyas and Manaha, Chittam, Ahankara. Now the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is the next level. This is the intellectual personality, the knowing personality. The Annamaya Kosha, that was the anatomical personality. Pranamaya Kosha, physiological personality. Manomaya Kosha, psychological personality. And Vijnanamaya Kosha is the intellectual personality, the knowing personality, the deciding personality, the cognitive or judging personality, the discriminating personality. That is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the intellectual personality. Now, we said Pranamaya Kosha, that is the Kriya Shakti. Then Manomaya Kosha was the Ichha Shakti. And Ichha Shakti, it corresponds to these emotions, the desires. And Vijnanamaya Kosha, that refers to the knowing personality. So it refers to Jnana Shakti. So Kriya Shakti is Pranamaya Kosha, Ichha Shakti is Manomaya Kosha, and Jnana Shakti is Vijnanamaya Kosha. So Vijnanamaya Kosha knows, Manomaya Kosha desires, and Pranamaya Kosha, it acts. And remember, for anything to be done, we need to have these three things. If you remember in the Yama Niyamas, when we were studying the values and all, that time we had said this ki janati, ichhati, yatate. These three things are necessary for anything to be done. For any value also to be implemented, these three things are necessary. मतलब जानती, पहले तो हमको जानना चाहिए, हमको पता होना चाहिए, right? Only then anything will happen. The first thing is jnana shakti. We need to know it, know something. Then ichhati. After knowing, then I have to have the desire. And then yatate. Yatate means acting, to put in prayatna for that, put in the efforts for that. So for example, suppose you learnt about the values, okay? You learnt about the importance of moral values in the yamas and niyamas. So the knowing faculty, the Jnana Shakti is working here. You are knowing it. The Jnana Shakti is working. The analysis is done by the Vijnanamaya Kosha. That time the buddhi is operational. Then after knowing ki these values are important, I know everything about these values now, then we desire to follow these values. That is the Manomaya Kosha, the Ichha Shakti operational. And finally, this Ichha Shakti, it drives us to act. Janna is not enough. Khali Ichha karna is not enough. After that, we need to act on that, right? To implement these values. And that is the Kriya Shakti, the Pranamaya Kosha. So these three, they act together to make anything happen. Okay. So this is the Jnanamaya Kosha. So this Jnanamaya Kosha also consists of 8 organs. Okay. Again, the 5 sense organs of knowledge, the Pancha Jnanendriyas. The Pancha Jnanendriyas, Manomaya Kosha mein bhi humne dekha ki Pancha Jnanendriyas are a part of the Manomaya Kosha also. The same Pancha Jnanendriyas are part of the Vijnanamaya Kosha also. Okay. Now, along with these Pancha Jnanendriyas, in the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the Buddhi means the intellect, the rational faculty of the Antakaranam, as well as the Chittam and the Ahankara. They are a part of the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So, the Pancha Jnanendriyas and Chittam and Ahankara, they are common to both Manomaya Kosha as well as Vijnanamaya Kosha. Clear? Khali Manomaya Kosha mein, Mana is the component of the Antakaranam, which is a part of the Manomaya Kosha. And in Vijnanamaya Kosha, instead of Manaha, Buddhi is the component of the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Clear? So what does Tattvabodha, how does it define? So Vijnanamaya Kaha, Buddhi Jnanendriya Panchakam Militva Yaha Bhavati Saha Vijnanamaya Kosha. Very simple definition. Only the components it is mentioning. So the Buddhi along with the 5 organs of perception. Again the same thing. Here they have mentioned only Buddhi. They haven't mentioned Chittam and Ahankara, because they include Chittam and Ahankara in Mana Buddhi only. So this is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So Vijnanamaya, Manomaya and Pranamaya, they together make anything possible for us through the Jnana Shakti, Ichha Shakti and Kriya Shakti. Okay. I just want to point out over here that when we say the emotional faculty and the rational faculty, they are not different organs, okay? The internal organ, the antakaranam is one only. It just gets different names, buddhi, manaha, based on the relevant function. So when it is the thinking faculty, the reasoning faculty, it is called the buddhi. And when it is the emotional function, the doubting function, it is called manaha. When it is the memory function, it is called chittam. And so therefore, mano, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, so they are not separate organs, okay? But they are just one organ named in 4 ways based on what function it is doing. They are just functional names of the same organ. Okay? So we have seen the Kriya Shakti, Ichha Shakti and Jnana Shakti. So this is the functional division of one Sukshma Shariram only. We have functionally divided into 3 parts. Okay, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha. The Kriya Shakti, Ichha Shakti and Jnana Shakti. Is this absolutely clear? These 4 koshas. So before we go into the Anandamaya Kosha, I just want to know if this is clear. Or if there are any doubts so far. Okay. Okay, now let us go to the Anandamaya Kosha. This is a very, very important part. And I want you to concentrate. We might go a little beyond time today, but this is a very important part and a very, very nice understanding. Okay. So be there. So the layer or the sheath of Ananda, the Anandamaya Kosha. Now, see, all of us, we get experience of Ananda or happiness as a feeling or an emotion from time to time. Correct? We all get this experience of happiness. Hai na? Like on and off, we keep getting these small joys, the experience of happiness. So on and off, we feel happy. So we can say that this emotion of happiness, it is associated with the mind, right? We experience this emotion in the mind, right? Because as we have already seen, mind is associated with emotions. So this experiential happiness also as an emotion, it is generally we associate it with the mind only. We feel that the mind becomes happy. The mind becomes unhappy, right? So happiness is experienced in the mind from time to time. This is what we generally experience, right? It is an experiential fact. Okay. It will be nice if you could just respond in the chat or something, okay? Because this is important and I want to know that you are getting it, okay? Okay. So this is what we experience from time to time, that we are experiencing this happiness as an emotion in our mind. Now let us analyze this experiential fact. So when the mind becomes happy, where does this happiness come from? So where does this happiness come to the mind? Does the mind produce happiness? Have you ever questioned this thing? that does the mind produce happiness or does happiness come from somewhere else? Normally हम क्या सोचते हैं? Normally we attribute the sense objects as the source of happiness. Sense objects मतलब से हमने बहुत अच्छा खाना खाया and we felt happy. So we feel that happiness, we are attributing this happiness to the food. हमने बहुत अच्छा गाना सुना, हमने बहुत अच्छा मूवी देखा, हमने बहुत beautiful scenery देखा, and we became happy. And we attribute this happiness to this sense object. We feel that this sense object, the khana, any favorable object, okay, any favorable object that gives us joy, nice music, nice movie, nice picture, nice food, even dear people, the people who are really dear to me. So I attribute my happiness to these sense objects, because when I come in contact with these, that is when I get happiness. That is when I feel happy. And these objects are outside of me, right? So I generally conclude that this external world of these sense objects, the food, the movie, the other people, they are the source of happiness. We always feel like that. कि हाँ बस मुझे ये latest phone मिल जाएगा तो I will be happy, और phone मिल गया and I'm happy. So I attribute my happiness to that phone, the external object. Or if this girl will say yes, no, then like I'm like totally settled, I'm sorted. I will be happy if I get this girl. Or I will be happy if I get a child. So we attribute our happiness to some object, some people that I love, or some event that I look forward to, right? So this is the widely prevalent belief. This is the conclusion that we make. It is a universal conclusion only, that these external objects and experience, they are the source of ananda. Do you agree with this? Do you all also feel the same way, that generally we always conclude that these external things are the source of happiness, are the source of ananda? Right. But the thing is, Vedanta radically differs from this conclusion. Vedanta makes a revelation which is difficult to understand, and it is very, very difficult to accept and assimilate. So it says that, so Upanishad or the Veda Pramana says that these very important, save this in your mind. It says that there is only one source of happiness in this entire creation, and that only source of happiness is you yourself, your real self, your true self. That is the only source of ananda in this universe. So even though the external objects appear as the source of happiness, because of our wrong understanding, they appear as the source of happiness. But really speaking, they are not the source of happiness. The external world, the sense objects, they are not the source of happiness. In fact, these objects don't even have a drop of happiness in them. The only and only source of happiness is we ourselves, our true nature, our true self. That is the only source of happiness. So then we may ask, so if I am the only source of happiness, then how come I feel happy only when I come in contact with these sense objects? If I myself am happiness, मुझे हमेशा ही खुश रहना चाहिए ना. But what do we experience? That only when I come in contact with something that I like, some favorable object, some sense object, it is only that time ki I experience happiness. I experience ananda. I feel happy. So let us understand that कि ये कैसे होता है. Actually, what happens that when we come in contact with something that we like, it is in that moment or it is in that short period of time, what happens? Our mind becomes completely calm. It becomes contented momentarily. So in that, like temporarily, it does not desire anything else. It forgets all other worries for that short period of time. So temporarily, it leaves all its 𝐵𝐻𝐵, matlab no kama, no more desires for that moment, okay? For that short period, no more desires, no more kama, then krodha, no anger, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, सारे षड्वैरीज रिजॉल्व हो जाते हैं वो छोटे से सम टाइम के लिए, ठीक है. राग द्वेषस, they get neutralized. Even ahankara, mamakara, everything gets neutralized. The mind becomes so calm as if it does not exist only, as if it is completely unmanifest, avyakt. So there is no disturbance, there is no conflict, there is no षड्वैरीज, no raga dvesha, nothing. So whenever you come in contact with एक good news आया कहीं से, वो छोटे से टाइम के लिए the mind becomes completely unmanifest, right? अव्यक्त हो जाता है almost, as though. So there is no disturbance. It is completely still, like the still waters. And we all have seen that if the waters are still without any disturbance, then what happens? We can see clearly through it. अंदर का जो है वो clearly बाहर आ जाता है, right? We can, it gets reflected absolutely clearly. Similarly, when the mind becomes completely still, through this still mind, the happiness which is my true nature, that happiness clearly reflects. And that is when we feel happy. So the external objects, the external people whom we like, who are like really dear to us. So these sense objects, they just provide a conducive environment for the mind to momentarily calm down. And hence the Atmananda. Atmananda means Ananda of my true self, my true nature, that reflects in the mind. For example, suppose like when I listen to ghazals, okay? Because I love ghazals, because I have raga for that music, so that music is capable of calming my mind, quietening my mind. My mind, which was first a rajasic mind, okay? It was running around here and there. It was activated by desires. There were worries, there were ragas, dveshas, which it had so many distractions. That rajasic active mind then becomes a non-rajasic mind for a short time. When I listen to my favorite music, or when 𝐒𝐡ā𝐬𝐺, for example, when he is with the cows, he might be having this kind of a feeling. So up to that extent alone is the role of the sense objects. मतलब हम जो इतनी खुशी, we are attributing the खुशी, the happiness to the sense objects. हम इतना उन चीजों के पीछे भाग रहे हैं ये सोचकर कि वो चीजें हमें खुशी दे रही है, वो चीजें सिर्फ इतना ही कर रही है कि थोड़ी सी देर के लिए वो चीजें या वो प्रिय व्यक्ति हमारे मन को शांत कर देता है। इससे ज्यादा these sense objects, they are capable of doing nothing more than this. They can only momentarily calm the mind. And understand one thing, that the calmer the mind, the more clearly the happiness, which is your true nature, that will be reflected. Like cleaner the mirror, truer the reflection. मिरर जितना साफ होगा या स्टिलर द वाटर क्लियरर द रिफ्लेक्शन, पानी जितना स्टिल होगा रिफ्लेक्शन उतना ही क्लियर होगा. See, this is a very important understanding. So now we know that the happiness which we experience is in reality just a reflection of the original happiness, which is the nature of your true self only. And this reflection takes place only in a conducive mental state. इतना तक clear है? Is this digestible? Please tell me, then we'll just go a little further before we conclude today's class.
Okay.
Yes, Lalita ji?
Okay, madam.
Okay. Okay. So, I'll just repeat that once again, that the happiness which we experience is in reality just the reflection of the original happiness. And that original happiness is the nature of your true self. And when does this reflection takes place? It takes place only in a conducive mental state. Okay. Now, further, some technical points we have to enter. Now, the next question is, what is that conducive state of mind? Molly, is it okay if we continue for some more time?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, what is this conducive state of mind? So, further analysis, Vedanta makes a fine observation. Okay, the conducive state of mind is really speaking the resolved state of mind. Only when the mind is resolved, only in that condition there will be reflection of ananda. Because an unresolved mind is an agitated mind. It is continuously producing unhappiness, restlessness, conflict, desire, constantly thinking of some work to be done. ये भी खत्म करना है, वो भी खत्म करना है, constantly stressed, constantly anxious, constantly insecure, and constantly desiring. That is how an unresolved mind is. So there is constantly these kind of disturbances. And Vedanta says that this is a very, very important verse. It says, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. This, if we can by heart, it is very important. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho bandhaya vishayasaktam muktaihi nirvishayam smritam. Means mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho means for a man, mind is the cause of bondage and mind itself is the cause of liberation. Bandha moksha, dono ka karan mana eva, mind itself is the cause of bondage and liberation. Bandhaya Vishay Asaktam means mind absorbed in sense objects, mind desiring sense objects. That is the cause of bondage. And Muktaihi Nirvishayam Smritam means the mind which is detached from these sense objects, from all sorts of ragas and dveshas. That is the cause of that kind of mind, that conducive mind is the cause of liberation. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshayoho. So as long as an active mind with rajoguna, fully active mind is there, there is no ananda possible. So every time we become happy, it only means that the mind is getting resolved. The mind has to resolve, means the mind has to as though go away. Mind has to as though disappear, as though it is not there only. And how does the mind go away? We have seen before also. So temporarily, it can go away by resolving into the Karana Shariram. Since the mind belongs to the Sukshma Shariram itself is born of the Karana Shariram. So the mind has to temporarily resolve in that depot, in that storehouse, in the Karana Shariram. It has to, as though, become unmanifest, go back in its bija form, seed form, as though it is not there only. Just like the deep sleep state. In the deep sleep state, क्या होता था? Our mind is completely resolved in the Karana Shariram or the Anandamaya Kosha. So when the mind is completely resolved in the Karana Shariram, in the deep sleep state, that time what was happening? This Anandamaya Kosha was spontaneously felt. In deep sleep, there is no identification with the body-mind sense complex. I have no awareness of how tall I am or how short or fat or thin I am. In deep sleep, कुछ भी नहीं पता है मुझे. So I have no awareness of even any physical pain. Right? अगर कुछ injury हुआ है और हम सो गए, उसके बाद do we feel that pain? So I feel no pain in deep sleep. There is no identification only with this physical body. Nor am I aware of any of the senses. This also we have spoken about. I see nothing in my deep sleep. That is why a thief can come and steal and go away in my presence. I am right there. But I am in deep sleep. So I am right there, but I am as if not there only. Then I hear nothing. There is so many times we said no, that the alarm just goes off, it rings completely and goes off. The dudwala rings the bell and goes away. But we don't even realize. Or so many times we are in deep sleep and the person sleeping next to us is snoring like anything and we are blissfully sleeping. So I don't even hear anything. I don't see anything. I don't feel any heat, cold, any sensation. So any of these five sensations are, if they are perceived, that means I'm not in deep sleep, I am awake. In Sushupti, all of these resolve completely. So physical body, no identification, senses, no identification. And also in this deep sleep, I have no identification with the mind. So no thoughts, no memories, no rationalizing, not even the sense of I, no ahankara. Hence, I'm completely ignorant about any kind of emotional pains, any kind of worries also. They also disappear in deep sleep. There is no raga dvesha in deep sleep. So there is no knowledge about the problems regarding the office or problems regarding children, wife, husband, problems regarding old age, sickness, stock market crash ho gaya, EMIs pay karna baki hai, global warming, koi no problems all the problems, everything disappears. Nothing is there in deep sleep. The state of aham kimapi na janami, when I know nothing, complete ignorance. So although the world, this body, mind, sense complex, everything is right here, but I am completely ignorant about it. Hence for me, the deep sleeper, everything, even my own body, mind, sense complex, it is as though not there only. And along with the body, mind, sense complex not being there, the samsara is also as though not there only. Mind is completely resolved, as though unconscious, ignorant about everything. In such a state, when it is so clear, it is absolutely clear, no disturbances, it is like a clear sheet of glass. And in that state, the inner reflection, the happiness is reflected. And this same resolution of mind, which happens in deep sleep, that resolution of mind, it temporarily takes place because of certain conducive conditions also. Means this sheath of bliss, it makes itself spontaneously felt एक तो deep sleep में, वो हमने देखा, right? Deep sleep में this Anandamaya Kosha, it spontaneously makes itself felt. तो दूसरा ये कब होता है? When, what happens when we have favorable conditions? But what are these favorable conditions? The favorable conditions are felt to the fortunate ones during the fruition of their good karmas, their virtuous deeds. Means punya karmas, our past good karmas, they give punya phalam in the form of favorable conditions. And these favorable conditions, they lead to a conducive mind. When everything is fine, when I get something that I like, when I meet someone whom I really love, or when I experience something really beautiful, things that we like, people that we like, experiences that we like, it is that time that the mind turns inwards. It resolves temporarily, okay? It becomes temporarily ignorant about the samsara, about the external world. And a conducive mind is this resolved mind. And according to Vedanta, Ananda is reflected not in the mind, but it is reflected in a conducive mind. Okay? Mind to hamesha hi hai. But हमेशा आनंद reflect नहीं होता है. But when the mind is conducive, when the environment is favorable, that time the mind becomes as though resolved. That is the conducive mind. Okay, so it is that time the Ananda, which is your true nature, that gets reflected. So to conclude, a conducive mind, which is equal to a resolved mind, means the mind like in the deep sleep state. So conducive mind, which is equal to the resolved mind, that is equal to the Karana Shariram. So in other words, Karana Shariram is the reflecting medium for that reflected Ananda. And how the mirror surface or the surface of the water reflects this original Ananda, in the same way, this Karana Shariram, it reflects the original happiness, which is the happiness of Atma. Hence, it is called the Anandamaya Kosha. This is the ultimate conclusion of Vedanta, that we ourselves are the source of happiness. We ourselves are the only source of happiness. So yes, I think this was a very, very important topic. If it is not absorbed yet, if it is not digested yet, please go back and listen to the Anandamaya Kosha part. Very important. Any questions? Take it. So we'll conclude. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So with this, we complete the analysis of the individual, the Jeeva Vichaara. And with this understanding, we'll move to the hero of our entire study, the Atma. Okay, the next topic is the topic of Atma, which we'll start in the next class. Okay, thank you.